Welcome to this developer log on how to install WSForm. WSForm as a version 1.0, this whole installation procedure will not be necessary, but for now I'll just quickly walk you through it. First you need to download WSForm and then install it into your extensions folder. If I have a look here, I got WSForm right here, so this is the server I'm currently on. There's a folder there, it's called WSForm. I just upload everything there. Now there's also a README, so let's have a look at the README. I can take this one. Here are the installation instructions, so you have them in the README. You also have them as soon as you've uploaded WSForm and you've set it up as saying that you want it to be used like so. Then you can also go to the documentation and under WSForm there's an installation, which is basically the same thing as what is in the README. There's also information about the config file, which is mentioned in the installation, and it explains you all the configuration options you have. So you can always find them in the docs. But for now, let's go back to the README here. So it tells you that installation will get a copy of WSForm and upload it to your server. In order to add pages to your wiki, you will need to set up a bot password for your account, or you can also create a user and give them the appropriate rights. Now on creating a bot password, here's the link on how to do that, and it explains you perfectly how that works. And if you want to create a user, which is also not very difficult, you just go to your special pages and there's a create account, and there you can create an account specifically for WSForm. So you could call it, I think it is suggested here that you can call it, for instance, form submitter, but that's all up to you. You can name it whatever you want, and then as soon as you've created the account, you go to user rights and then you add it. So we have this user, and then you make sure that it's in one of the groups where you want to give certain rights to that user, because it needs to create and edit pages, so it needs to have administrator rights. That's what we do. Okay, and that's it. So you need to create a user or use a bot password. And then the next tab is so as soon as you set up the user, it tells you to open up WSForm config default, fill in the username and password you created in these steps here, and if you're on the farm, you can you can do some other stuff, and then save the config file. So let's have a look at the config file. Config, and it says open config default, which is this one. So here you enter the username and the username and password you created, or either the bot username and password. And then you got all the other options which I mentioned. You can find them in the documentation. The other method, because it said or, so let's have a look at the or. And as soon as you've edited this config default, you save it as config.php, and then WSForm will find it. It tells you here. Or as soon as you've set up the user, you can also go to special WSForm setup and follow the instructions there. So let's quickly do that. I'll probably have to delete my config, so let's first do that, because otherwise it will not work. So delete. So basically I have now what you have. I just uploaded it, although the only thing I do have, of course, is that MediaWiki is loading my extension, is loading WSForm right here. I have that in the local settings. So I go back here and let's have a look. We're set, go to setup. So let's go to setup. Okay, setting up a new installation of WSForm. Well, read the manual, or here or in the README, on how to create a user and add it to a user group. And then it needs these permissions. So if you added them to a user group called admin or administrator, make sure that upload file, and file upload equals true. So you can just type this into your local settings. Then there's some other MediaWiki settings that need to be set in your local settings, which is called WG allow copy uploads, and this one. And WSForm already checked it. They're both okay. Otherwise you would have a red notice message, and then you just need to copy this or type it into your local setting, and then equals true, the same one for this one. And then basically the rest is what you either do by doing this manually here. You can now do that here. So if I would type WSForm needs to know the address of the API for MediaWiki. It calculates it. I've never found it to be wrong, but in case it is wrong, because you have installed your wiki like WWiki/ I don't know, then it might be faulty, and then you can just add it here manually. And a path to a cookie. Now on our hosting providers we have a temp folder, and it will create the cookie there. If for any chance you have problems, I'll show you. Let's make this temp2, which does not exist. So I'll just save this. And now, as you can see here, it says, well, either the path is wrong or it doesn't exist. At least I can't write to it. So that's, at least you get a quick notice if the path you gave is accessible and writable to WSForm. And now basically all the other things that you can type in here manually, you can just simply fill them in here. If you want to use SMTP for sending emails, because WSForm can send emails, should WSForm have high security? Should, yes. Enable document editing, document, all those kind of things, and you can read in the docs what it all exactly does. So I'm not going to go all through that now. And basically, if you just save the settings now, everything is set, and you're good to go. You can see that here, by the way. So if I would now refresh this and have a look at the config, you notice that everything is filled in for you, so you don't have to do that manually, which is easier. One last thing, because you can, of course, with security, you can prevent access to WSForm setup for certain user groups, so that you don't want them there and only admin people can see this. But if you find that too difficult, or you think, well, WSForm is working fine, I don't need to set this up anymore, you can just simply add this to the config file right here. So let's do that. Save, upload. And if I would refresh now, well, I'll load it up again. You notice that setup through special pages is disabled, so people can't do anything anymore there. Just in case that if somebody would find that or knows about WSForm and they would like to see the password and all those kind of things, now they can't. So yeah, last part is, if I go back to the README, I'll open that up again. So yeah, we created a user, and then the generic settings that's in the note box that you just saw, they were fine on our server. What else do we have? Well, then you need to basically load the extension. This is the old-fashioned way. This is if you have an old wiki, but otherwise just use this in your local settings. One final thing, we usually build up a website, and it's funny because on this website we don't. This is like a developer website where we do not have Chameleon as a skin, but basically what we always have is a banner, a main part, and a footer. And what we do is we put WSForm show messages, we put that in our header or in our footer, doesn't really matter, just a spot so that you can have WSForm show you error messages if there are any error messages, but also you can say if somebody fills in a form, you can have a message on the page that the form was successfully submitted, for instance, and it's all done through this WSForm show messages. That's it, and there you should be able to work with WSForm. That's all to it. Alright, thank you.
Wikibase, Wikibase, Wikibase Solutions.